Hi, welcome to the first episode of Youngblood TV. This is newly created by Youngblood as a media platform to share design ideas, design topics, to talk about design issues and get connected. So we find it very useful, especially at this moment where everybody gets locked down at home. So this will become a new portal or a new window for us to say hi and to send a message and to share our insight, most importantly. So during this lockdown period, Youngblood works remotely from home, and we had purposely set up a special team to work on research topics, to work on a series of topics that ponders around the issues of global pandemic. So the first topic that we would like to share with everyone here is how does the pandemic affect on design of public spaces in the future? So why public spaces is because Youngblood projects weights more on public spaces such as complexes, shopping malls, retail chain stores, chain restaurants, supermarkets, educational, corporates, and even attractions, and even transportation. Transportation hub. So this topic matters the most to our clients. So that is why we choose this as the first topic to share here. The issue of post-pandemic design is just like eco-green design that used to be a hot topic back in maybe 10 years ago. So we believe that this global crisis is definitely going to set a trail, and eventually all designs in the future has to look into this aspect, which is fit enough to fight any new pandemic that may come. Even though we might successfully fight COVID-19 eventually, but we don't know in the future there might be COVID-20, there might be COVID-25. So our design has to be fit enough and ready enough to serve in the future. So first of all, we believe in a total redefining social platform. Before this, when we talk about designing public spaces, it's all about bringing people together. It's all about social interaction, putting people together, get connected. So during this pandemic global crisis, social distancing has become a new term, which before that we hardly even hear about it. But right now, social distancing has become the most important topic to fight this pandemic especially. So after this, will this be carried on into our lifestyle? And how long will it be there? We do not know yet. So that is why in the future, all this design has to consider social distancing as one of the topic to fight whatever new pandemic or new global issues that may surface in the future. But we believe that the get-together culture will definitely come back, because people always like to be seen, like to be heard, and like to get together. So we believe the get-together culture will definitely come back. It's just a matter of time. So when we design new public spaces in the future, the new planning design can look into inserting all this social ground into more open ground, more open space with natural ventilation, and applying all passive design as healthy good flow of air can reduce the inhabitants of bacteria or viruses, as many researchers have supported. So this is one of the key concerns that we can apply in the future. And next, about dedicated lanes and pathways, because it's all about cross-infection, it's all about human contact. In the future, where people tends to get lazier because of technology. So we think that a public space could turn into perhaps multi-level of intersection circulation, just like highways. You get to a place, you cut through the road, and you get to the place faster, and you don't get through traffic lights. It's the same concept of traffic highways. So it creates a whole new flow of circulation to allow people to get to the destination instead of passing through many intersections. So in this case, dedicated pathway or circulations can be created to help people travel conveniently from one point to the other point without cross-passing too much of unnecessary spots. This is from a very macro point of view. This is all applied in master planning, on planning on purposes and designated objectives of the space. So this will be applied on the macro. So in terms of micro, that means in terms of the detailed operation of space, there's this topic here which will evolve around the fear of touch. As we all know, during this pandemic period, we can all wear a mask to protect ourselves, but we cannot eliminate from the use of touch. We still have to operate, we still have to hands-on things, and we cannot totally eliminate from touch. So the first measure that we can widely apply in the public spaces design in the future is automated system or voice command system. All this is applying technology, and we cannot deny that in the future the built environment has to work around with technologies very closely. Yeah, so all this is to improve the activities within a space, so we cannot deny the power of technologies. So first of all, we can think about, which is very common, is auto sliding doors. So in the future, maybe all doors access will be replaced by auto sliding doors where you do not need to operate manually. So this is one of the key points. Next, we can foresee that majority items in indoors will be all sensor operated. Even though this has been long introduced in the built industry, but it's not widely applied yet. First is maybe because of the cost efficiency, and also because of, mainly it's because of the costing. So after this, in public spaces, we can see that majority interior fitting items such as faucets in the toilet, the taps in toilets, anything you can think of, the flush mechanism, the sanitizer dispenser, even toilet paper dispenser, anything like vending machines, lift buttons, all these will be sensor operated. Next, we can incorporate systems like the Siri or the Alexa from the Google. So all these voice command control can take over human touch operation and operating public facilities such as lift buttons, such as vending machines, or even paying a car park tickets. So there's this ticketless car parking system already widely introduced in the market. So this is one of the ways to reduce human contact. We no longer get a ticket, we no longer insert the ticket back to the machine and pay using notes. So by using a ticketless parking system, I think some shopping malls, some innovative shopping malls has already started to implement it. It is actually very convenient. The system actually auto screen the car plate, and it will be connected back to the system, and when you want to pay, you go to the machine and you just press your car plate number and it's automatically charged, maybe through e-pockets, like e-wallets, and it can be conveniently done without any banknotes transaction. So by putting a step further, maybe it can be incorporated into cell phones, where you operate everything through cell phone, through your screen, and you no longer touch anything in the public. So these are all technologies connected. These are all integrated with technologies. So like voice command like Siri or Alexa, something like that can be applied throughout. We may not know, one day we are all becoming touchless. This has all been innovated, has all been designed, and has all been created, but it's not widely introduced yet. So because of this global pandemic, this global crisis, I think it's going to push the use of all this technology basis design. It's going to be applied widely in the market eventually. Another point that our team has captured here is about automated cleaning robots. This is something which some malls have been applying, but developing in a further basis, we had captured that and summarized that a wider walkway in the public space can be implemented to promote a better cleaning procedures. As you know, that the sanitizing and cleaning procedures is very important during this pandemic period. In the future, when we talk about cleaning, maybe walkways of a public space, not a shopping mall, of a public space, can be purposely designed to make it in such a way that the automated cleaning or sanitizing robots can have a special route that doesn't interfere the walkway of human pedestrian. So these automated Autobots, we call it Autobots, yeah, these automatic cleaning robots, the Autobots, can actually have their own routes and move around in the scheduled timing in the public spaces. Maybe it will not be done just at the end of the day, but it maybe can be preset and pre-scheduled even during operation hours, but it does not affect the traffic of the users or the public in the space. So this again lessens the contact of human, because we no longer need the sanitizing team to come and work on the sanitizing work. It's all digitally operated by using robots, and because we foresee that in the new world, technology is definitely going to replace human participation. So the above mentioned are all related to technology based. So what if we put aside the advance of technology and look from the aspect of building technology? What else can we do? So we have a few points here, starting with better air ventilation system by improving the system by isolating them into smaller packages. This can be applied, like for example, in a co-working space, which is facing a very big downturn at this period. So for example, the centralized air corridor of a co-working space can be broken into few zones. For example, lobbies having one isolated cluster by itself, the meeting rooms having one zone, and the working space having one zone, for example. By breaking them into smaller isolated units, it actually reduces the risk of cross-infection. Because the airflow, because now we're not talking about natural airflow, it's about artificial. This is an active design. So by breaking them into smaller compartments, smaller smaller units, so it actually limits the contamination. So it will happen in the smaller group, and it will not it will not spread to the other compartments. So it's just like the idea of fire compartmentation. So it can be applied into centralized air ventilation system as well. So that's one of the points. And the next one we talk about, like back in 20 years ago, roughly 20 years ago, after the bombing incident in Thailand and riot in Indonesia, if you happen to visit these two countries, if you go to the shopping malls, you will see every entrance there will be a screening. There'll be a screening device that X-ray you and make sure you don't bring any hazardous weapons or any dangerous items into the malls. So this has been a living culture in these two countries. It's all because of what had happened, and that caused them of having this culture, which is a norm. So after this, we foresee that every public space will have this screening arch that actually screen your health and can send a signal alarm if detected sick. Maybe it's a fever, or maybe we have to play with the advance of technology to come up with this a screening device that works to screen whatever hazardous hazardous bacteria or hazardous sickness that human carry. So in the future, we may see that every entrance into a public space will be redefined in such a way by not having a security guard that search your bag or check your temperature, because we are talking about limiting human contact. So it would be all technology based, maybe an arch, a beautifully designed doorway that it's camouflaged and you don't see it as a sensor, maybe a nice entrance arch that welcome you, but it's equipped with all these screening devices built within. So this will become a culture in the future. Right now, we see there's a lot of sharing of information of some shopping malls having this arch that has all this sanitizing, it's all the sanitizer vapors that spread on you before you go into the supermarket or go into the shopping mall. This is probably a temporary measure for public space, because nobody wants a beautifully set hair or beautifully dressed clothes to be wet after you cross over the what do you call it, the spraying machine, the spraying tunnel. Yeah, so that could be a temporary measure, but for long term we probably have to look into a different way of sanitizing, because you don't want your beautifully blonde hair to actually being jeopardized after crossing through the tunnel. I mean, for example. Now moving further on, looking to the back, there must has been a lot of nasty fire in the past that resulted in the authorities' requirement of using a fire sprinkler in the building. So perhaps in the near future, sprinkler, but not for the water for the firefighting purpose, but sprinkler for sanitizing chemical purpose, may be applied in building interior as part of the authority requirements. We may not know. It's just like having nozzles for the nozzles for water for the firefighting system. So instead of splashing up water, it's splashing up sanitizing chemicals that can clean and sanitize the interior. Of course, this is also subject to the type of suitable sanitizer that can be applied and without damaging the existing interior surfaces. But this is one point that definitely can be further developed, because this will become an active design in the building which can be applied throughout. If it's being implemented as a authority requirement, then automatically it can become a way to make sure that building is safe from contamination. So unlike sprinkler that only works during a fire, this chemical sprinkler maybe can work daily or weekly after the operation hour to sanitize the interior. So instead of having human manpower to carry out the sanitizing work, as we're all talking about limitation of human contact, so this active design is going to help by keeping the interior safe without any intersection of human traffic. Next, we can look into a series of antimicrobial material. As per research has shown, copper is one of the best materials that is antimicrobial. And also in the market, there is antimicrobial paint, there's antimicrobial laminates, which we had just spoken to a few suppliers. A few suppliers has actually come back to us and acknowledged that there are certain series that has a health report saying that it is antimicrobial and antibacterial. So certain materials can be widely applied in the future to make sure the interior is safe from the risk of infection. So the above mentioned are all related to building technologies, whether active or passive way, and also the implementation of advancing technology into the interior space. So the next one, we look into a more in-depth in terms of human behavior, operation culture, especially in retail stores and restaurants. So as we all know, one of the major hits from COVID-19 is actually on the retail sector, where except for the essentials, the rest are meant to be closed. So it's really a big impact for the retail sectors, and we hope that a few design measures that we had came out with in our research paper can help in the future. So for example, for restaurant, for the culture of dining, we definitely see a shifting of culture from, let's say, a large sitting area to a lesser sitting area design planning. We also spoke to one of the major chain restaurant owner last week, saying that after this, the mission is to look into smaller cluster of sitting area. That is because we see the possibility in the future, the culture of eating out is going to be tremendously cut down, and there'll be more on the trend of delivery and takeaway. But that doesn't mean that all stores has to close down. There is a need to serve, and people still like to be out there. But it's just the possibility of growing from a large built-up area to a smaller built-up area. Yeah, so this will create a trend of smaller built-up area and where render is cut down, and more focus is on the sales register counter and also the takeaway portal. We foresee that in the future, every outlet there will be a facility of a take-out express counter that is for people to pre-order and to come and collect without cross-passing the crowd. They just come and collect, or it's for the Grab drivers or for the food delivery companies driver to come and pick up. So we foresee that there's a need of transition of designing the counter, where there's an express counter for the food pass of delivery pickup. And if social trend is still preferred, of course people still like to eat out and sit together with friends and chit chat. So when this social trend is still preferred, the sitting can be set more apart and ready for compartmentalization for grouping and isolation purpose. So that's one of the ways. So as said earlier, the takeaway and pickup counter, in the future, the habit of shopping may evolve a bit into order and pickup and delivery service. So this means in public spaces like a store or a supermarket, there shall be a dedicated zone which is always at the forefront of the shop. That means at the shop front. The purpose is, once again, is to limit the traffic of human contact, and where artificial intelligence is allowed, we can actually use artificial intelligence to manage the inventory, where the AI can do the sorting of the stocks, the transferring of goods via travelator lanes, the moving travelator lanes, and also replace. So this can replace human contact in a way without much surprise. Now, there's a research carried out by Aalto University from the United States just recently, showing how the particles from a human's cough can travel in the space through a very short period of time, and even though it's being shoved away, that means there are shelves that actually dividing this person that coughs and how fast it can spread even though it's shoved away. So this simulation video we had shared in our Youngblood social website, our Facebook and Instagram. We had shared on it, so you can actually find the clip from our page and look at how scary it is. The video actually shows how fast the particles can spread within the time frame from a place to another, even though it's shoved. So pertaining to this, in the future, public spaces may look into further compartmentalization. Like, for example, we take the case of a supermarket, for example, a grocery store, for example. It has rows and rows and rows of gondolas. So even though you feel like next door, you can feel next door is sneezing or coughing next door, you feel like, okay, it's further away, I'm not harmed by it, but it actually travels, and in fact very quickly. So what we can see in the future design is by having further partitioning, maybe even above the gondola shelves. So in this case, it actually protects the space, breaks it into smaller pockets and smaller compartments, just like fire compartments regulation. So in this case, if there's any contamination, it is quite limited to certain boundary, and it doesn't just spread across widely. So that's one of the key points that we can apply in public spaces, because public spaces is where it talks about wide encompass of footprint area, floor area we're talking about. So this can be one of the good points, one of the base points to be applied. And in stores such as supermarkets or grocerants, often trolleys, basket or thongs are shared item by the public. So in the future, we may look into these items to be sterilized and to be sanitized, possibly in a centralized parking bay. For example, like after you use a trolley, you can always park it back to the centralized parking bay. But that parking bay can be like a mini enclosed garage that has sanitizing nozzle inside, that has all the UV lights inside, that does the sanitizing process automatically. So that means the next user, when they go and hand hold the trolley, it's already been sanitized. So all these are some active designs that we can apply in the, public spaces, for example, supermarkets and retail stores, which can minimize the spread of infection. Other than that, one of our team members came up with this very good idea about having UV lights along every shelf, underneath every shelf, that actually sterilize the goods on the gondolas, for instance. So all these are possible points that can be developed further in terms of looking at how to improve the design in a public space to cope with the future pandemic issue. Lastly, we would like to highlight on the flexibility and adaptability of a space to adapt to all kinds of situations. For example, how a public space is able to transform into a refugee camp, for example, in this case. Like, for example, right now we see over the world, we can see that some stadiums or some convention centers being converted into refugee camp. So this is from a macro, they set a micro interior by having further partitioning. This is an add-on, an ad hoc basis. We're talking about how in the future, let's say a space being easily converted. That means they are not, there's no need of building in new items inside, but it's easily converted to cope with the need of setting up a temporary settlement. So from this aspect, every time an architect works on the master planning, the flexibility of the space needs to be redefined and reconsidered to be able to turn into temporary settlement for such pandemic of global crisis. And for example, right now, if you know, across Malaysia, there are many good hoteliers who had contributed in this pandemic situation by offering their hotel rooms as the quarters for isolation rooms. So this also means that in the future, hotel room designs has the role to be fit and to be able to transform into usable temporary living quarters that fulfill the basic requirements of isolation and all the standard operation procedure. So this is also one of the very interesting topic for hotel designs, looking at the need of able to be adapt and transform into an isolation room in case of emergency. So that's also I think one of the very interesting topic that we can look into in the future. Now, for conclusion, as an interior architect or an interior designer, we all have a role to play in terms of redefining or redesigning the new measure of design for the new world after the pandemic. Now, we may not design or invent vaccines or medicines or stir any global economic awareness, but we are always here to inspire and to lead our customers, our clients into building a better world in the future. So in this case, it's all up to us. Even though what the points that we had proposed earlier, there might not be any regulations or any authority requirements yet, but it's all up to us interior designers or architects and also owners, that means the business owners, whether or not to incorporate all these points into the design of a public space in the future in order to brace ourselves for what that may happen in the future. We may not know. So we all learned a lesson, didn't we? So it's all good to prepare ourselves. It's all good to equip ourselves with all this basic knowledge, with all this basic awareness, so that we can design a better future. So thanks for watching this episode. I think it's a little bit long, but because it actually summarizes all the points, all the informations that we had compiled in our papers. So we hope that this will become an inspiring topic for everyone out there, especially we want to dedicate these messages to our clients, which are mainly in the public spaces sector. So we hope that this will be a good piece of information to be shared, and we will keep coming up with good topics to be shared with with the public and community and among our clients. And let's just hope that we all can breast through ourselves. We all can go through this pandemic crisis together and have a good new future eventually. Thank you for watching. Thanks.